Good morning and welcome back to this first day of the 2021 American Hop Convention's virtual platform. We appreciate all of your participation, and we also thank the sponsor of today's virtual platform, Hop-Steiner Company. Our next session will discuss the National Clean Plant Network, Preventing Disease Spread for the U.S. Hop Industry. Your speakers are Dr. Scott Harper, a virologist and assistant professor at Washington State University. Scott is also the director of the Clean Plant Center Northwest. And your second speaker is Tanner Hunt, who is the National Clean Plant Network Hop and Tree Fruit Coordinator. Both of these speakers are located at Washington State University's Prosser Research Station. So with that, I will turn it over to Tanner and Scott. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you to the American Hop Convention for allowing us today to speak to you about the National Clean Plant Network and the HOP program that is here at WSU Prosser. So the National Clean Plant Network, it was established by the 2008 Farm Bill. It's used to promote the importance of pathogen-tested healthy plant material for specialty crops in the United States. This program focuses on 7 specialty crops, ranging from berries, citrus, grapes, roses, fruit trees, sweet potato, and last but not least, a hop program. There are 3 areas that the National Clean Plant Network focuses on, and which the programs themselves revolve around. So the 3 areas are diagnostics, therapeutics, and foundation. Diagnostics is testing for targeted pathogens. Therapeutics is using virus elimination therapy to clean infected plant material. And then the foundations are used as an industry source of clean plant material. The network is large and has grown considerably since it started in 2008. Just in December, a new program was welcomed into the National Clean Plant Network in Hilo, Hawaii. There are currently 47 programs. There's 35 centers operating in 20 states across the country. And the HOPS program is unique. It's only represented at one center, and it's here in Washington State.
Okay, so switching speakers here. The Clean Plant Center Northwest, it's based at WSU's research station in Prosser, and as Tanner said, it's the only clean hop program in the country. And our job, our role, our mission is to provide virus-resistant hop material to US growers to prevent the spread of harmful pathogens and diseases. Why, you might ask, is because viruses cause significant damage to hop plants. They reduce both yield and quality. As you can see here, they can cause significant damage to the plant. And most importantly, viruses can reduce the growth of hop plants, causing what we call stunting, the vigor of the infected plants, and in extreme cases can kill the plants. And you can see here over on the right, the effect of very young plants, a couple of months old, of a clean plant that doesn't contain any viruses is growing quite vigorously, whereas those that contain both apple mosaic and hop stunt variety are barely growing at all. So in some cases, if you get infected material when you're setting up a planting, it isn't going to grow at all, or very, very poorly, very slowly. So it affects your yield, it affects your productivity of the plant. In some cases, it doesn't get off the ground. The other important thing to know with plant viruses, in hop-infecting viruses, is that they can also reduce both the alpha and beta acid content in the cones, affecting product quality. So often the very traits that you want out of your hops are the ones that are being harmed or reduced by the viruses. So they are a significant problem to the hop industry. Now, the best way to manage hop-infecting viruses is to not get them in the first place. It seems pretty like a basic concept. If you don't have a disease, you don't have to deal with it. But it's actually very important because many of the hop-infecting viruses are spread by insect vectors. And if an insect has nothing to pick up, it's just an insect and you just have to deal with the insect damage, not the pathogen damage. And also, a lot of these are mechanically transmissible. They can be transmitted on tools, on when cutting, pruning, that kind of thing. Anything that transfers sap between plants. And that, again, if you had an infected plant, you can transmit that down the entire row if you try and top or hedge your vines. So if you don't have these things in the first place, it's easy to manage. And that's where clean plants come in. That's the whole concept behind the Clean Plant Network and what the job of the Clean Plant Center. Clean plants are germplasm that has been tested repeatedly and found free from viruses. And then once we make these plants, we store them under controlled conditions to prevent reinfection. And then these plants go out to you guys, the growers, to set up your new plantings. So the Clean Plant Center Northwest, my center, produces and stores these plants, as you can see here, and they're in little growing boxes, and distributes cuttings and plantlets to growers. So you're starting off with material that you know doesn't have hopstuck virus, doesn't have hop mosaic, doesn't have apple mosaic, doesn't have these pathogens that would affect their growth, particularly at the younger stages of the plant's life. So how do we make one? It's a relatively straightforward process, a number of steps. Starting with, we receive germplasm from around the country. So from growers, from hop breeders, federal breeding program. We propagate it, let it grow for a bit, and then we start testing it for a list of harmful viruses. So it's lab-based testing. And we test each plant for a number of both viruses and viroids, including now citrus bark cracking viroid, which is causing significant problems in Europe. We test them for the whole lot, this list here, to make sure that these plants don't have them. We also have been performing what we call high throughput sequencing, next-gen sequencing over the past couple of years to search for novel pathogens, and we occasionally find them and then have to deal with those as well. So if the plant's found to be infected, and unfortunately most hops we receive are, we carry out a mixture of meristem tissue culture or other viral therapy techniques, be it cold treatment, etiolation in the dark, to remove the viruses found. We then propagate these plants again, test it again twice to be absolutely sure that whatever was there in the first place is gone. And then once it's clean, free of the targeted viruses, we put it into our foundation collection. So into that collection where it can be stored under controlled conditions, ready for distribution to you, the growers.
So within the National Clean Plant Network Hop Foundation, we have 42 varieties that are maintained within screen houses at the Prosser location. On the screen over here is a list of all the varieties. Just as last December, I believe, Mount Hood and Chinook were re-entered into the foundation, having undergone their maintenance testing. So we provide maintenance testing for all varieties within our collection every 3 years, and they undergo testing for the 5 viruses you see on the screen: apple mosaic, hop mosaic, a hop latent, American hop latent virus, and hop stun virus. It didn't advance. So we offer 2 types of products available to industry or any sort of a hop grower. We offer a 5-node cutting. These are unrooted green cuttings. They're offered for sale throughout the summer and early fall. And then they comprise of shoots that are approximately 10 to 12 inches long with an average of 5 nodes. And our requests are taken from March 1st through August 31st. In addition to the cuttings, we are also offering rooted plugs starting this year. This will be the first year that we offer them for sale. So they are available throughout the year. We do ask to allow for a 6 to 8 week period for order fulfillment, and then we do have a minimum number requirement on our rooted plugs of 50 plants per flat. So those are the 2 products that the center is able to provide the industry in terms of getting clean material out there. And then if you're interested in more information about the National Clean Plant Network or the Clean Plant Center Northwest, We have our contact information up here. There's also more information on our website. It's a great resource to learn more. And if interested in any business inquiries or general inquiries, please reach out to the center's business manager, and his email and phone number are listed on the screen. And if there's any questions from anybody, that's all we have for you right now.
Thank you, Tanner. I'll start off with a question. So we've had the certified rootstock program available in the hop industry for a number of decades. I think it was originally started back in the 1960s, but the Clean Plant Center Northwest is a relatively new addition to the program. So Scott, can you give us a little bit of history on how the National Clean Plant Network came to be and how long the Clean Plant Center Northwest has been in existence?
Sure. I guess there's two parts to the answer. What is the Clean Plant Center Northwest now? It's been around at the Prosser Research Station, working on a number of crops, originally tree fruit, since the 1950s, and it's gradually added other crops along the way. So it's a long-running program. Hops have been supported at that location for long before my time. Certainly, I've only been here 4 years. But since at least the last almost 20 years plus, the hops have been working into that location. The National Clean Plant Network was originally set up, as Tanner mentioned, came into being around 2008, with hops being one of the first crops to enter the network, along with tree fruit and grapes, which are incidentally the three crops that we work on. And the National Clean Plant was set up as to recognize a need nationally between a number of crops for the need for clean germplasm, to have that service available, that germplasm available and maintained and supported by the USDA to make sure it was available. And it's grown since, the crops coming in, but hops has always been there. It's only a single center crop because most of the hop industry is located in the Northwest, and it's a good place for us to be, right in the heart of hop country.
Wonderful, thank you. We did have a couple of questions come in on the Q&A tab. So the first one is, what is the economic benefit of using disease-free plants compared to non-certified plants?
Actually, very good timing on that. We worked over the last year with economists from Cornell University on this very question. And there is some difference between if you're growing a highly alpha crop versus an aroma hop, but it's a cumulative effect over time of yield losses through the effect of virus infection, particularly if they start out infected, and the cost that will be incurred as you remove those plants, or eventually remove the entire planting. So that is the primary economic benefit, is less yield loss by having plants that are unaffected to begin with, and the costs of replacement if you don't have to remove them. So that work will hopefully be available online and posted out to other people soon. It's currently in its final review stages.
Wonderful, that's very helpful. There's the next question coming in through the chat box. Is there a potential to use ELISA or similar tests in the field to monitor virus occurrence and inform on-farm quarantine methods?
Mm-hmm. There is ELISA. It's more of an older technique now, and there are only ELISAs, for those of you familiar with the platform, for a handful of hop-infecting viruses. Most of them, the antibodies don't exist. They simply have never been made or commercialized, so they're not available. There are laboratory-style tests that have been successfully moved to the field with there's a company called Agdia, which is one of the largest diagnostic companies in the country, that has produced a test that can be used in the field for hop stunt viroid, for example. And they are working on others, I believe. But it does have a significant buy-in cost. The machine itself that you need is almost $10,000, and the tests themselves run about $17 a test, so it's not cheap, and you do need some laboratory knowledge. So there hasn't, unfortunately, been a whole-scale movement of tools that can be used in the field. They're still is some laboratory component, or at least the equipment you need to run a lab to be able to do this, but it is being worked on. And I'm happy to see that hop stunt was one of the ones that came out first, because that's, more than anything, is the worst pathogen, or at least viral-like pathogen you can have in hop planting. So they focused on the critical ones first. And if anyone has any further questions on this, contact me. I can send you the details of that machine.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate that. So our next question in the chat box is, does the Clean Plant Network get cross-checked by any other companies to confirm that the plants are clean?
No, not currently. It's not part of the network. Any private provider does, and some commercial providers do check the plants themselves. But no, it's a single, the Clean Plant Network is separate from the commercial world because it is government funded.
But you do run all of the plants in the network through periodic testing. Can you give us a little bit of a background on how often the plants are evaluated to make sure that they maintain clean status?
Yeah. That's an important part of our program and part of the foundation. It's not just the making of the clean plants. That's one part of it. The core of what we do is that foundation maintenance. So the plants themselves, once they complete the clean plant process and are completely cleaned up of targeted viruses, they're placed down the foundation. It's set up in screened facilities so that insects can't get in to start reinfecting them. We have management practices to make sure that we don't transmit any viruses in on tools or ourselves. But every plant is tested on a 3-year rotation, so a third of the collection a year, for those 5 targeted viruses, which are the 5 most critical and important viruses. Over the past couple of years, starting in 2018, we have been testing them every year to gradually clean out the old material from the collection and ensure that the cleanliness is maintained moving forward. So now we've carried out that rigorous process, we're onto a more relaxed rotation because those practices are in place. But if a new pathogen is detected or reported, such as citrus bark cracking viroid out of Europe, as soon as that was reported, we went through and checked every piece of material we had for that, because that was an unknown until that point. And should other pathogens emerge, we'll do the same thing. Or if we see trends out in the local industry that a certain pathogen is, pressure's really starting to ramp up, if there's an outbreak of something, we'd target that pathogen as well, just to be absolutely sure that nothing had gotten in.
That's great, thank you. The next question from the chat box, are there restrictions upon importing plants from outside the United States? And I might take that one step further and also ask you to discuss a little bit about the state quarantines that are in place in certain locations.
Yes, there are absolutely restrictions on importing hop plants from outside of the US. It's all controlled by USDA APHIS under a permit control process, where the plants have to be brought through federally approved importation site. You just can't do it yourself. And it's a real risk if people don't follow those procedures, because importing plant germplasm brings in a lot of pathogens. It's one of the reasons we have so many pathogens to deal with, is people illegally import things without taking through the proper process. So the process itself is described by APHIS, and it's plants are held in quarantine for 2 years and observed and tested for the targeted pathogens that APHIS cares about. At the state level, there's generally restriction on movement of hop germplasm between the states, particularly in the Northwest. We don't want hop material coming in from any other state, and that's controlled by the various state departments of agriculture. That's why the Clean Plant Program exists, in part to allow germplasm to move between states, because it's kept tested, it's kept under controlled conditions, as opposed to out in the field where we have no idea of its status. So it's a very rigorous process, and has to be followed for everyone's sake.
Thank you. Do those importation restrictions apply to seed?
Unfortunately, no, they don't. And this is a matter of some heartburn to me and the other people in the regulatory world, is that seed importations are not, well, they're supposed to be reported to APHIS and tracked, but often they aren't. And seed can transmit pathogens in. So there are some viruses that can be transmitted through seed. You grow that plant up and you've got an infected plant, which you then spread. So it's a real risk, and I cannot stress this enough. People should not do that.
I know that the Clean Plant Center Northwest and your advisory group, the National Clean Plant Network for Hops Tier 2 Board of Directors, has been looking for several years at developing basically a standard operating procedure or some kind of a protocol for propagation facilities so that we can ensure that once the material leaves your location and goes into propagation at a private location, that it stays clean through that propagation process. Can you give us some insight as to what the status of that model clean plant propagation system currently looks like?
It's very much still in the works, but it's part of a national standard that's been worked on for all crops. Hops is one of the targeted pathogens we'll hopefully roll out first. We're trying to describe how the plants should be kept, what they should be tested for, best management practices around maintaining those plants so that they don't get infected once you're propagating them, and any testing requirements just to make sure that they stay that way, insect controls, working on cleaning tools, that kind of thing. So we're trying to identify the steps at which plants could become infected, or rather reinfected in this case, and identify them and work out management practices for the growers or for the propagators so that doesn't happen. The state itself, or at least Washington, the state of Washington, is working on a certification program where the state will monitor that production supply chain from us through the nursery, or propagators rather, through to the when the plants are sold to the grower. And the state will be monitoring that. And so they're trying to decide what steps they need to take to monitor those plants to maintain cleanliness. So everything is very much still in we're working on it phase at the moment, but it's coming together. And I think now 2020 was not a good year for progress, but I'm hoping this year we'll get more progress done on it.
Fantastic. So we're coming up on the end of this session. I don't have any remaining questions in the chat box. Oh, one just popped in. Aside from viruses and viroids, are there other pathogens that can be seed transmitted?
Viruses and viroids are the primary ones that can be transmitted on seed, but you can get fungal spores and some bacteria on seed coats or on the outside of the seed, or mixed in with other bits of plant material that may be still attached to the seed, and that's a primary concern for USDA at the moment, or for APHIS. It is very, very easy to move all manner of pathogens around by seed, especially if it isn't tested or treated properly before it's shipped.
Thank you. All right. Would this apply to something like powdery and downy mildews, or possibly verticillium?
Not my specialist area, and if Dave Jansen, he can answer that, but otherwise, theoretically, you could have some powdery mildew spores or downy mildew spores, and maybe in a dormant phase on the seed. I don't know the probability of it. Like I said, it's not my specialist area, so I don't want to say too much, but potentially yes, and it has happened with other fungal pathogens on seed.
Thank you. Your next question. Hops grown in Florida are being planted in the middle of February. Is it possible to get material from the National Clean Plant Network on that time of year or a couple of months earlier?
That's something we've actually been working on and thinking about over the past year, and are now taking steps to try and make that happen, because we have been historically working on a Northwest planting scale with our seasons, our planting times, but we are trying to set up the infrastructure to be able to provide material throughout the year, particularly if we have with hot plugs and things like that. If we have enough warning, we can start producing those over the winter so that they're available for February. So any inquiries of that kind, please let us know, please contact us, because we can try and accommodate that. We're trying to work on that very question.
Fantastic. So I see no more questions. We are coming up on the end of our time with you. Any last comments for either of you that you'd like to share with the group?
It may seem like a no-brainer, but clean plants are very important. It's the easiest way to manage this disease is to not get it in the first place. And certainly for viruses, that's very true. So I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it is very important.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Tanner, any last comments from you? You're on mute.
I have seen a couple extra questions pop up in the chat function, but if you have questions, please reach out to us. We're always available to answer questions, and Scott is willing to spread any information he can with everybody. So.
Right. And the last comment that just came through in the chat box was, so start clean and stay clean. And yes, I believe that's your mantra, correct?
Yes.
Very good. Well, thanks again to our sponsors, and we'll let Scott and Tanner go ahead and close down their session while we are transitioning over to the next speaker.